Bruce, you can't keep doing this. Step out of the shadows. Don't let tombstones be your family legacy. I know you're trying to create a myth. Just remember, there is room for Bruce and Batman inside that suit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first inaugural episode of Click and Point. And shout out to Nicholas Bristol for the title. That was probably a harder task than anything getting ready for this podcast.
Wait, we're called Click and Point?
Click and Point, I guess.
I thought we were point and click.
Are we point and click?
I thought we were point and click.
God damn it! I have to restart the podcast now.
Or you could leave it in. Either way, we're.
I don't know. Nah, I'm not going to start. I'm already here. So anyway, what the hell is it? Point and click or click? I'm going to go with point and click because that sounds better.
Point and click sounds good to me, yeah.
That sounds much better.
All right.
Fuck you, Bristol. You fucked it up for me. So anyway, I am Adam Razak.
And I am Jordan C. Johnson.
All right. And we are just... God, how long... This has been a long time coming, talking, just in general.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, man. When did I first encounter you on the internet?
Fuck, man. I don't know.
2008, I think? I think 2008. I think that's when I started at EAC.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that was so. Yeah, so for people listening, yeah, this is what we've been interacting online for about 8 years, and this is the first time we've ever spoken in voice to voice.
Yeah, it's a little strange because it was strange hearing your voice for the first time on the Guardians of the Galaxy Fifth Opinion. It's weird when I hear people I've interacted with, on a non-verbal basis on the internet. It's always just strange hearing their voice for the first time.
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, well, now I can attach a voice to an opinion I hate of theirs.
Yeah. And on that note, so yeah, I used to do a movie podcast called Fifth Opinion with a couple of other people. And this is the first podcast I'm doing since then, other than guest appearances here and there and other things.
And it's I will admit, I actually was I had a mini anxiety panic moment when I messaged you about the idea for this. I was like, oh God, if he says no, I'm going to be like, oh crap, now I'm going to have to find somebody else to do this with.
No, I'm excited, man. I've been wanting to do something like this about Telltale for a long time. We should probably mention what it is we're talking about.
Yeah, this isn't just story time with us. So.
Yeah.
Unless that's what you want. I mean, that's, I hope you don't tune out now that you know it's not story time with Adam and Jordan.
Yeah. So we're talking Telltale Games. All about Telltale Games.
I love them. They're great.
Which, I imagine people who are listening to this probably know are probably looking for something about Telltale Games, so understand what it is. But, so just in case you don't, which you probably should before listening to this, so they're a video game developer that makes, narrative and choice-based games.
And I know a lot of people... I'm pretty sure the majority of fans, their very first introduction to them was The Walking Dead, which we'll probably in the next episode is what we're going to cover. Today we're covering Batman, episode 1. What the hell is it? Realm of Shadows? City of Shadows? I think Realm of Shadows.
I think the Realm of Shadows.
I should have had the name
first, but yeah. I was actually a little surprised that they didn't. I mean, the title is just Batman: The Telltale Series.
Yeah.
Which I guess simple, but
I like that because it doesn't have a dumb subtitle that I can make fun of. Like a lot of the really crappy Spider-Man games out there have just get increasingly stupid titles. Like what was it? Realm of Time or Out of the Shadows, and just really
kind of like Realm of Shadows.
Yeah, But I kind of like that because it reminds me a lot of the Batman Begins thing, where I just think of Liam Neeson in like a black suit. Where I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because, we should just start by saying both of us share a love for Telltale, and I think they're doing a lot of really interesting things that really no other developers doing, or not even just developers, really anybody in any other artistic medium is doing right now in the same kind of way. They're really sort of pushing the envelope in this great, exciting way that makes me play everything they put out, regardless of what the subject matter is. But we also disagree in a lot of things outside of that,
Oh,
and
yeah,
even
we
within
do.
that. And I think I know for sure I disagree with a lot of things that probably a lot of people listening to this think. So, uh,
You're not alone on that because
yeah,
fuck Game of Thrones. I'll just throw that out there.
yeah. And you know what? Fuck Walking Dead, and fuck Borderlands, and fuck
Fuck Minecraft.
Batman.
Fuck Minecraft. Hey, wait a minute.
I don't care about Batman at all.
Ah, mm,
I think now I will say I think some really good things have been made from Batman. I just, generally speaking, yeah, I'll just say it right now. I don't read comic books. I hate superheroes. Don't like any of that shit. So, and generally speaking, I don't like a lot of the popular video games out there either. So that might be a weird entry point for me here, but
that's the
that's
sound
how it
of
is.
all of our audience just like, nope, done.
But
Nope.
that's okay though, because
Yeah,
we
I'm still here,
love
so that's okay.
Telltale. Yeah,
Oh,
we'll get into all this stuff real deep.
yeah. Um, but yeah, where should we start with? Oh, that's right. I forgot to bring up the Google Drive thing. I'm fucking unprepared for this shit. Um, fucking Skype distracted me the whole time. Just like no, you're gonna sit here and watch as I update your computer, and I'm like, oh. But let me get that Google Drive thing out. So how we got into Telltale?
Yeah.
What? Do you remember specifically? Because I kind of remember specifically how I got into Telltale.
Well, it was okay. So I got into Telltale through, I mean, I think like most people, like you mentioned, through the first season of their Walking Dead game.
Hmm.
And I remember that I just downloaded that free demo, got really interested in it based on that, and just played the season from there and was hooked. I don't remember specifically how I heard about it. I feel like someone told me about it. I don't really remember who it was. For all I know, it was you, but I have no idea. But I think like the big thing that hooked me was it wasn't too long after. Well, I guess when did the first season come out? Was it 2010?
2012, I believe.
Oh, okay. So I guess it was a
Yeah.
little while after. I was hooked on the Mass Effect games, and I was hooked on those. And a big reason I was hooked on those was the choice-based dialogue trees, all that stuff, which I know have been in games for a long time, but they really haven't matured into what they are now until I think recently with like Mass Effect and stuff. There's like a ball for me when I try to play those old school ones where the protagonists have no voice and it's very like text based, and it's like
Hmm.
I can't get into that stuff. So I was hungry for something else I could play after Mass Effect that had that level of involvement and decision, and this was just something that kind of interested me, so that's where I started.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it for the whole year, 2012, because I used to not used to. What am I saying? Used to. I still subscribe to stuff like Game Informer. I've done it since like 2005. I think that was the year I really got into video games.
Oh man, loyal.
But I remember them talking about it and talking about in their end of the year stuff about how oh, the ending to this is wonderful. It'll make you cry. It's so magical. And I was like, oh, all right. I might have to get around to this eventually because like I've said before, I don't care about The Walking Dead, and like
Yeah.
you said, it's a testament to how strong their writing is, where they can take properties that I have very little to no interest in, and make them stuff that I care. And I guess zombie fiction in general is something I don't personally
Yeah,
have that much interest for. Like
at
I mean,
least
even
contemporary.
yeah, and like a lot of games that have come out with zombies in them after the Walking Dead stuff, like
Yeah.
Dying Light, which is just garbage.
Yeah.
Or something like
Dead Island.
ugh,
Ugh,
I hate Dead Island.
terrible.
Even like zombie like stuff, like I guess Sunset Overdrive. I just like because they're kind of zombie-ish a little bit. I just couldn't get into it. I don't know why. I mean, it sounds right up my alley, but I don't know, just something I just
So
couldn't get
you
into.
wait. So you did not begin playing Walking Dead until the first season had ended?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So I guess then it must not have been you who told me.
No, I had a free game rental from Redbox one day, and that was the one that I chose for PS3 when I was there, and I was like, oh, I've wanted to play this for a while. I'll just check it out. And I only had a day, I think like a day or two to play it, and I just knocked it out in one sitting.
Yeah, it's
I
addicting.
was not prepared for what. I mean, I'd heard that it was, like very powerful and like draining and depressing, and I was like, probably not. I'm probably not going to react like that. It hit me like a fucking train, particularly some parts. Particularly, I think episode 3 is the one where I was like, holy shit, where did all this come from?
Yeah.
Damn.
And I don't want to like get into Walking Dead too deep yet because obviously we're going to talk about all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot there in the contrast between that and like the TV show, where even though they're sort of dealing with a lot of similar situations, there's something about the writing and the interactivity in the game that is much, much more engaging than anything that happens in the TV show. And this is and I suffered through, I think, like 4 or 5 seasons of that show, and I like, I you know what? I'll say this much: I still like the first season, and I still like some of the second season. And there are like a few little episodes dotting after that where I'm like, okay, little things happen, and like, okay, sure. But for the most part, by the end, I was like, this show is absolutely horrible. It became just like this predictable slog where it becomes so cynical that it's predictable, because in every situation, the most cynical thing that could happen is going to happen. There's never going to be any hope or humanity in it. It's just like dark. It's just like pointless darkness in every episode. And it's just, after a while, I was like, there's nothing here for me anymore. I'm done. This is just boring at this point.
You got way further than I did. I bought the first episode, and I gave up like halfway through. I was just like, no, that's not for me.
Yeah.
No, thank you. And after the opening scene, I think it was with the little girl where she like kills somebody and her jaw is hanging open. I was like, oh, this might be something cool. But then I was like, no, I'm done. This is just.
Yeah, you're not missing anything.
I've based on what some of my old GameStop coworkers have told me, I'm just like, no, because they'd be like, oh, why don't you come over and watch The Walking Dead? And I'd go, because I hate it.
Yeah, no.
But
yeah, so
Batman.
Yeah, Batman. All right. So.
What were you gonna say? I'm sorry.
No. Yeah, I'm just. We're like beginning our Batman Walking Dead video game podcast by shitting on nerd culture, which is hey, I'm down with, because I fucking hate nerd culture.
I'm more cynical about it these days than I used to be, but I still have a soft spot for I don't know, because I kind of have this like bullshit pretentious way of trying to distance myself from nerd culture, where I go, no, what I used to do is be like, no, I'm a geek, I'm not a nerd, and then someone would go, what's the difference? And I would just be like, here's nerds, and I'd point like to the bottom, and here's geeks, and I put that like higher, because I couldn't like verbally explain.
Yeah, I am very much neither. And I will fight any motherfucker who tries to say otherwise.
Oh man. But yeah, I was Batman. This is probably my dream project from Telltale. Like, if you were asked me what would be the one property that I'd want Telltale to tackle, I'd be like, Batman. Not even think about it, just Batman.
And if you were to ask me what would be the one property I wouldn't want them to tackle, it would be Batman.
See, like when they showed that reveal trailer at the fucking the Game Awards, I was just like, holy shit. No way. No fucking way.
So what is, okay, so I think we both have very different histories with the Batman property.
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess you go first because you clearly love this stuff.
I love Batman. I'm not to my own defense. I am more than willing to criticize something Batman related. I'm not like some people that I've encountered where they just blindly love everything Batman related just because it's Batman. I hate Batman Returns. I don't. In general, I don't like the Tim Burton movies. I think
Yeah,
those
I don't.
bore,
I'm not a fan of that one either.
bore the shit out of the first one,
Yeah,
especially just bores the shit out of me. Even with Jack Nicholson, who I
yeah,
love. Batman Returns, I've hated ever since I was a kid. I remember watching that at my dad's shop and just feeling miserable just watching it.
yeah. I agree, and I don't really know why because I feel like it should work, but it just I don't know something about it just bums me out.
I love like I in theory I should love the dark Christmas
Right.
because it reminds me a lot of like Tim Burton stuff like Nightmare Before Christmas, Edward
Hmm.
Scissorhand, where it's a dark,
Which are
snowy,
great.
wintry environment. But it's
Yeah.
so miserable. It's just everything
Hmm.
that happens in it. Like there's like the like even like way at the beginning with the penguin being abandoned by his parents because he looks like a mutant penguin. I'm just like this is so
Yeah.
miserable and not
And
like
like
it doesn't make me feel sympathy towards the penguin, especially when he starts doing his murderous thing near the
yeah,
climax where he's
it's
like, I'm gonna drown children, I'm gonna kidnap all firstborn children and drown them. And then
yeah,
the
like
movie
it's
wants to like flip it on its head. Well, spoilers for Batman Returns, by the way.
yeah,
I
it's
just
not
there's lots of
it's
spoilers for lots of stuff in
oh,
here.
oh yeah, I think that probably should go without saying.
If you haven't seen Batman Returns, I'm sorry, I'm going to spoil it. Like the whole thing where the Penguin, uh, like it tries to make him in this like sympathetic villain, and I'm like, how the fuck do you want me to sympathize with somebody who even before the public, even before Batman like, rightfully exposes the horrible stuff that he plans to do, it's like, oh, you want me to root for this guy that's just a pretty much a psychopath. He's just a psychopath with I guess just
Yeah,
a
and it's not like it's not like an interesting darkness. It's not like a
no.
darkness that is compelling, and I feel like I get a sense thematically of what's going on and where this movie is it at like thematically. It's just kind of like this is just kind of I don't even know if dark is the right word. It's just kind of gross. I
Yeah,
don't really know. I don't know
that
how to describe it.
exactly that. No, gross. It makes me
Yeah.
feel icky just thinking about it.
And
And
not
I
which
should
can be good, like in other
yeah
Burton movies, like something like yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas. I could see somebody saying the same thing about that movie, but I don't know. I'd probably
so,
maybe I'd have to watch it again, but there's just it doesn't click. It doesn't work like Burton's other stuff from that
no.
period.
Well, at least his like '90s stuff. I can't
Right.
speak for modern Tim Burton, which I used to be like a big Tim Burton Johnny Depp fan, and now whenever I see their names, I just go, oh no, uh-oh.
Yeah, it's I thought Dark Shadows was okay, but that's about
Oh,
all I
dude,
can say.
I hate Dark Shadows. To me, that's besides Batman Returns. To me, that's like the low point of Tim Burton's career. And
Wow.
yeah, I remember seeing in the theater, and I just was like, I am not enjoying this at all. I think the one time I even cracked a smile is when he's first reborn, and he looks up, and he's like, I think I forget what he says, but he sees the McDonald's sign, and that's what he says. I think it's like metamorphosis or something like that. And
Hmm.
he just looks at the McDonald's sign. I thought that was cute. I thought that was kind of funny. But everything
Yeah.
else, I'm just like, this is so boring. And I was really looking forward to it because that was like at the height of my Johnny Depp, Tim Burton thing, particularly after like, oh, well, like actually no, Alice in Wonderland is a piece of shit. Something like I think
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd is what kicked that off. I love Sweeney Todd.
Oh, see, Sweeney Todd is probably my least favorite Tim Burton movie. I hate that movie.
Oh, I love this.
Terrible.
That was like one of the defining moments of like my
Oof.
middle school years watching it. That was one of those movies, along strangely enough with The Dark Knight, that like really got me into
Oh
movies more
man.
often.
I also hate The Dark Knight, so there's that too.
Oh wow. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So here's okay. So that's your history of Batman. So you're into like you love the Nolan movies, right?
I love the first two. I'm
Okay.
very mixed on The Dark Knight Rises. That's
Okay.
probably one of the most disappointing things, a big wasted potential with that.
So I'll throw this out there. So I I hate Christopher Nolan. I dislike all three of his Batman movies. If I had to pick one, I'd be tempted to say Dark Knight Rises is the best, but probably not. Dark Knight is probably the best, but I don't like any of them. So
Judge.
yeah, so here's my entry. So that's my entry point. My my favorite Batman movies are, I think, far and away, Batman versus Superman is probably the best movie of the last 3 years. Best movie since Spring Breakers, I would say.
Great
And
movie.
and
Very underrated.
yeah, but my second favorite Batman movie is Batman and Robin, actually. Which yeah, there's that.
I think if we had done this like a few months, I think like a few months ago, I would have been like, ugh, but I'm mostly just indifferent towards Batman and Robin now, particularly after Batman Returns. I'm just kind of like, if I were to choose one, if I were to choose something that's just kind of mildly annoys me or something that just makes me feel gross, I would rather go with the mildly annoyed thing.
One of my things, like I have my own sort of perspective on movies, I guess. And if anybody wants to know what that is, you can listen to the Fifth Opinion because it's all over that.
I would think that because
Yeah. Um, so for me, something I can really appreciate most of the time is a filmmaker who is just uncompromising about their sort of aesthetic vision, and they just go balls out with it. I love Michael Bay. I love Zack Snyder. I love late Federico Fellini. I love all those guys who just get huge with what they're doing and just go big visually. And hey, say what you will about Batman and Robin. Like I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy. It's intentionally silly and nuts. But but I say what you will, but I mean that guy goes balls to the wall with his visual style, does not compromise. He creates a fucking world with that movie every bit as much as Tim Burton more. And hey, I respect the hell out of that. I think Batman and Robin is a lot of fun. I think it's gorgeous to look at. I here's genius casting and hilarious. And hey, I'm into it.
Have you ever seen Batman Forever?
I have, which I think is okay, but it's sort of like a diluted Batman and Robin.
Oh, see, to me, I really like Batman and I almost said Batman and Robin. Batman Forever, and like that's the one that everyone's like, ugh, you like that? You don't like the Burton movies, but you like that shit? And I'm like, well, yeah, because that's the only one out of the original four that I actually really like. I've liked it ever since I was a kid, and I saw it on like a crappy TV at my dad's shop. What the hell were we talking about? Oh, but like how I got into Batman? Adam West. That's how I got into Batman.
Oh yeah, shit. Adam West. Yeah.
That show is the fucking shit.
Hey, I'm into Adam West Batman. I like it.
Yeah, I have very fond memories growing up with that. Because we didn't have cable at my house back a long time ago when I was a kid, but my grandparents did, and thankfully they lived just right down the street. So what my grandpa would do, he would tape old episodes of the Adam West Batman because they would only come on TV Land like really late at night. So he'd after school he'd have them taped for me, and I would watch that. And I love the Adam West show. It started to kind of get dumb. Like even for me, it kind of reached that point when they started surfing and stuff like that. That I was like, okay, no, I kind of losing me here. But everything that had to do with like the old stuff where they had Cesar Romero's the Joker, who I fucking love. Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. I think that the Adam West show is what kind of started my love of like really over the top goofy villains like that and cliffhangers. I love cliffhangers. And they would have one at the end of every episode. And I would just love it being like, and I knew in my head that the next episode would start like right after the credits, but I'd still be like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen next? And then I'd be like, oh wait a minute, it's right next. Yay! I can just watch it again. This is awesome. So I even watching it now because I rewatched the movie, which I have on VHS. It's a good movie. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like the movie.
And thankfully, I still need to get that Blu-ray box set that they have of like all the entire series. I can't wait to get that one of these days. So I very much a fan of Adam West stuff.
I like the Adam West stuff, but small doses for me. Like I can watch the movie, I can watch like an episode of the show at once, and I'm like, okay, I'm good for a while.
When you do marathons of it, it might affect me more now, but you start to see the formula. Like you can
Yeah.
literally see the formula in your head. It's like it's like any TV show, honestly.
Mhm.
Any kind of like serialized TV show, you can see the formula. It's why when it comes to most TV shows for me these days, I tend to just kind of give up halfway through or just lose
Ugh.
interest. Like I tried getting
Yeah.
into the Blacklist just because of James Spader, and I was
Oh,
like, I'm like, it's okay, and I like
yeah.
him, but
It's
I literally could see everything that was going to happen, and I'm just like, yeah,
well, I mean, and that's I mean, part of the problem with TV shows is that right now, I mean, they're so unlike movies, they tend to be based around script and story,
mm-hmm.
and that becomes a problem for me because that's not something I'm particularly interested in, and it's like you're just getting this sort of narrative information without the sort of aesthetic flair that movies tend to have, so it just becomes boring for me. Like that's not what I'm looking for in visual art. That's not what I want. I don't want to just watch a story with people moving through it. And I mean, it can be done well. There's some where it's like really, really good. I mean, the first few seasons of the X-Files are incredible. Some of the best TV I've ever seen. And it's not
I've
because
never seen the X-Files.
it's those first couple seasons are great. And it has nothing to do with like visuals at all. It's just the writing and the characters and I
Mm-hmm.
mean the narrative just fucking hooks you and yeah, it's great for reasons that it's great for reasons that are different than most movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that now in TV, so much of it does feel formulaic to me, and so much of it feels so based in this really tired cynicism. It's not just The Walking Dead. It's afflicting tons and tons of TV shows, all the big ones. I only got through like I got through one episode of Breaking Bad. I was like, nope, I'm good.
Oh,
I got through one episode of Game of Thrones. I was like, nope, don't need that. Like
oh, you
most,
got
yeah.
I got like the first season, and I was just like, no, that's another one that just makes me feel miserable, and it's something that I should like. Like I like a lot of the stuff that Game of Thrones is trying to sell me on, like the gore and the chess game that the characters play. But I'm just kind of like, but it's so miserable. It's so
It's
dark. It's
And but
just
it's dark for no reason. It's dark as an affectation. It's just stupid. Like
yeah.
there's nothing I mean, darkness in and of itself is not inherently bad. I mean, there are
No.
lots of great works of art that are extremely fucking dark, but that darkness has to be for a reason. There has to be something being expressed through that is actually intelligent and has depth and is interesting. But they're just TV is not that. TV is darkness because this is the mature art form now for adults. So it's just pointlessly dark because that's what people think maturity is. But it's like, that's not maturity. It's just fucking like adolescent brooding. It's boring.
I think Boardwalk Empire. Have you ever seen Boardwalk Empire?
I watched the pilot.
I think that's one of the ones I fucking love that show. I saw that like it's very rare that I follow a show all the way from inception to uh, damn it, finale.
Hmm.
But I think what people get out of Game of Thrones with like the gore and the darkness and the chess game stuff, that's what I get out of Boardwalk Empire, which I love seeing Steve Buscemi try to navigate his way through the different gangs and organizations that try to take him down. It's fascinating to watch, and he gives a remarkable performance the whole series through. And then you get people that like a bunch of guest stars like Michael Stuhlbarg, who's great. You have
Great. Yeah, I mean, great cast for sure.
oh yeah, I'm trying to remember his name. Oh, Bobby Carnival. He was a
Oh
villain
yeah.
on one season. He was phenomenal.
He's always great. I love him.
Yeah, he barely even he only killed people like occasionally on this show, but he was just watching him. You're just like, this guy's a fucking animal. He's just
Yeah.
unhinged, and you're just waiting for that like thing to drop and just shit to go down, and it's terrifying watching him.
Yeah.
But that's to me like that's exciting, and I find the violence in it interesting. I think it's
You know,
very well filmed. Like some of the like I like after watching Boardwalk Empire, I'm just like, oh my god, I never want to get a shave, like a straight razor shave like they do, because pretty much almost all murder, like organized murder on that show is like done through like slitting somebody's throat or gouging their throat out or something like that. And I'm just like, no, I'll never do that. No,
I know
thank you.
we've really fallen down a tangent hole here, but we're on
Yeah.
topic. I will say the one TV show that I consistently love and that I think is legitimately and honestly has a lot of profundity in it and is visually interesting and unique and just beautifully written and just great with tone and serious when it needs to be, funny when it needs to be, is fucking Z Nation, which is a show that almost nobody respects. But man, that show is honestly one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. And I mean, some of the stuff that goes and some of the episodes of that are better than like 95% of movies coming out now. And I only watched it because a guy who he was like an executive producer on it, and he directed a bunch of the episodes, wrote a couple of them, is John Hyams, who made two incredibly underrated movies, which are Universal Soldier Regeneration and Universal Soldier Day of Reckoning, and now is going to be making a Maniac Cop remake produced by Nicholas Winding Refn, which is going to be fucking off the chain. But oh man, he is one of my favorite directors working today, and that show is incredible, and everybody should watch it. I get why a lot of people don't take it seriously. It's produced by Asylum. It's on Sci-Fi, and it has a certain goofiness to it. But like in an intentional, so a self-aware way that's not, but also isn't like bring self-awareness to like an ironic wink, wink, we get it level. It's a great show, and there's nothing else like it on TV.
I actually had to Google what that was. I've never heard of it. So, but this actually sounds kind of interesting. Even though seeing sci-fi and next to anything, I'm just like, I don't know.
Hey, I get it. They make a lot of shit.
Yeah, they do. But anyway, what is the next thing that I have on this? This is why I love Google Drive so much. I can just pop this up.
I think we're supposed to be talking about a Telltale game at some point.
I don't remember which one though. But you got into? How did you get into Batman? Like, well, not like get into it. How did you? How do I put this? I guess familiarize.
Sure. I mean, I guess I didn't. I've never read a Batman comic book. I have no interest in doing so. As a kid, I saw like the Burton movies, and I saw the Schumacher movies, and I saw the Adam West stuff, and liked it to varying degrees. I have no attachment to the character or material at all. Never liked the Nolan movies, even when those were coming out. I was like, nope. I saw Batman Begins in theaters. I was like, this movie is fucking terrible, and I have not changed that opinion. But I mean, I still don't care about the material at all. But like I mentioned before, I do think Batman versus Superman is incredible, and I'm interested to talk about how the treatment of Batman in that compares to this game, because. Okay, I'll say this right now. I guess we should just kind of jump into the game, but the episode. So we're talking about the first episode, first season of Batman, and I like this episode. I think it's mid-tier Telltale, and and as this podcast, and we talk about Walking Dead and Tales from the Borderlands, Game of Thrones, all that stuff, Wolf Among Us. I think like the picture will grow of how we feel about Telltale and where things kind of sit within it and what we like about it. But I'll start just by saying I think this is middle of the road, and I think part of the issue is not necessarily a huge part, but for me there is a little bit of fatigue. I think some of it's like we're like setting up a new Bruce Wayne and a new Batman, and we're touching on again his past about his parents getting killed when he was a kid outside the theater, and we're touching on like why he's becoming Batman. We're touching on Alfred and politics and all this stuff, and I'm kind of like, okay, I kind of feel like I've seen all of this many times over through many different like reboots and incarnations, And I'm just, at this point, I'm sort of like, do we really need to even touch on this anymore? Like, do we really need this explained? I get that as a narrative, you want to have set up so people understand where you are. But I guess I just wonder, are people really not going to know at this point, like what's going on with Batman? I mean, I think Zack Snyder made a good point when he was talking about what he wanted to do with like Batman and Superman and why he wanted to reimagine those characters. Because at this point, those characters are pretty much contemporary mythology. I mean, they're just part of our pop culture or even our culture at this point. And it's just like people sort of know it. Like if you're making a movie about Jesus Christ, do you really need to establish like his backstory for people to get it? I mean, I think people know the backstory of Jesus at this point. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
some of the stuff I sort of felt like, can we just move through this? I don't need to like hear about his past again. And I think
Yeah.
I
There's
think
only
part
so
of
many
that,
times I can see his parents get shot before I'm just like, all right, I
yes,
get it. They died.
exactly.
The pearls, the Joe Chill and all that shit. I get it.
And,
Because I
but I
kind of
will,
was like, I kind of rolled my eyes when that like shadow popped up behind him. He goes in like that little
yes.
mini flashback. I was like, oh my god, not this
And
again.
yeah, and you know, and it's interesting because it's almost an unfair comparison because or complaint because if none of the other Batman stuff had been going on in the culture, that moment is sort of effective. I mean, they're
Sure.
visualizing what's happening inside of him, right? So you're seeing the internal conflict in him, and it's being rendered in this sort of artistic way that you can understand. It's not badly done,
No.
but when you consider that just earlier this year, I got to, or I guess whenever it came out, like, no, it was earlier this year, I got to see like Zack Snyder vivify all that through that opening scene of Batman versus Superman, which I think is amazing. Like I think it's easily the most interesting visualization of that whole thing that's ever been done. And part of it is because he sort of cuts to the core of what's important about that moment, about the loss and what it means to Bruce Wayne as a character and where it puts him psychologically in order for him to become Batman. That all that stuff is visualized in such a great way. And it's so like the second Snyder did, I was like, yes, you got it. This makes perfect sense. Everything is clear. I don't need to see this again. So it's sort of like, I wonder if I would feel the same sort of fatigue if Batman versus Superman hadn't come out so close to this. I don't know. And it's like, I don't know if that's a completely valid complaint because it is outside of this game, but nevertheless, it plagued it as I was playing it.
I'd say it's a valid complaint because even if Batman versus Superman hadn't come out, there is so much. There's almost an overkill of Batman media out there currently,
Yeah.
and all of them always touch upon, his parents are dead. They made fun of that in the Lego movie. So I'm
Yeah.
like, where he's like, my parents are dead. Would just say that so randomly, and
Yeah.
that was just a joke because that's constantly what Batman does sometimes.
Right.
But I don't know. I'd say because Telltale should know by now. I mean, they do dive into the sources that they do write for. I give them props for that. They do like to be authentic, and even for like people that don't like this material but are familiar with it, they like to give them the atmosphere of it, like something uh, like like something that I don't like Borderlands, I guess. Like I
Yeah.
still like the humor in Borderlands. I find it amusing, but I don't like the gameplay. I don't find it interesting. But taken in this Telltale format, it still feels authentic to that kind of space cowboy wackiness that the Borderlands games have, except it's in a
Sure.
format that I like. Now with Batman, I find it interesting that that something like this is coming out so soon, especially after all of this, all the Batman movies and all the Batman TV shows and all the, not only just cartoons, but like live action shit, like the god-awful Gotham show that came out on Fox. Um, but I was wondering what they're going to do to make this stand out compared to all the other ones, especially since the Arkham Knight was just released last year. So
Hmm.
people, I feel like, are kind of like, all right, well, we've had Batman games for like the past, like good Batman games for the past better part of like a decade. Like, what are you going to do now? And I think
Sure.
the way they answer that call is by focusing much more on Bruce Wayne, who we don't really see a lot in video games, because when you pick up an action Batman game, you don't want to be playing as Bruce Wayne. You want to be playing as
Right.
Batman. But
Yeah, that's a good point.
seeing Telltale do this, it is a format, especially the choice-driven stuff, where having Bruce Wayne be a playable character, be a very extensive presence throughout the whole thing, feels right. It feels natural, and it feels
Sure.
like something different. I mean, we've seen this kind of Telltale gameplay before with the choices. You know, you have to make the decision like A or B by the end. They always have that classic A or B choice at the end of the beginning episode.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that with, you know, whether to give the evidence to Vicky Vale or to give it to Jim Gordon, or whether to arrest Falcone or brutalize him. They always have those like A or B choices. But seeing it through the Batman context with Bruce Wayne, that's something interesting. And I think people, the reviews that I read kind of were like, well, Bruce Wayne's just not a very interesting character. Bruce Wayne's just kind of flat. Bruce Wayne's not very interesting. But I'm kind of like, well, that's kind of the point, because he doesn't want to be interesting. He considers Batman his who he really is, but he considers the mask to be Bruce Wayne, and that's what the game is exploring.
Well, part of the problem with that kind of criticism too in a choice-based game like this is it's kind of not fair to criticize the playable protagonist as uninteresting, because how much of that is your fault? I mean,
Yeah.
because that character is not going to necessarily be the same character for everyone playing the game. So the characterization is going to be different depending on how you shape it. It's like you can't just go to look at Mass Effect and be like, Shepard is such an uninteresting character, or Shepard is such an interesting character, because that Shepard is going to change massively between how every person is playing that game. I mean,
but you are Shepard.
Right. It's really kind of up to you how interesting that character is going to be and what you want that character to be. I mean, as I was playing through this game, like I do with pretty much any choice-based game like this, I began to formulate my own idea of who Bruce Wayne should be, like how I want him to be, how I think he's feeling. And the challenge with games like this for developers I think, and this is something we'll talk about a lot on the show, I think, and it's a limitation for me, at least, that Telltale has run into now and again, is how much will they be, as a developer, how much will they be able to anticipate what the player may want the characterization to be, and how will they accommodate that? And will they or won't they sort of funnel you into feeling certain things that maybe you don't actually feel? With this episode, I don't think it was too bad. I think Bruce Wayne kind of became sort of what I wanted him to be. And not that I had something that I wanted him to be, but as the game went, I sort of formulated how I felt about who he was. And my favorite moment of this episode, the one that I don't think a lot about this episode stood out, but one that stood out to me, and this is something that I think is really unique to Telltale versus other choice-based games and developers. So let's compare this to Bioware, where you have decisions that you can make, and I think in Bioware, I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something about the Mass Effect games that they make me want to make not the best choice, but the choice that will have the outcome that I want. So if I were to make a choice and maybe potentially be unhappy with that outcome, or maybe hear about what the outcome could have been otherwise, I might want to go back and redo that and be like, no, I'm not happy with this. I'm going to change that. I don't like how that piece of dialogue turned out, or I didn't feel good about that, whatever. And some of that might be me, some of that might be how it's written, and things coming out differently than I expect them to when I make the choice. What I'll really give Telltale credit for is I've never had one of those moments in a Telltale game. I have moments where I have serious regret right after for what I just did. But what's great about their writing is it's never the kind of regret where I'm like, I want to go back and redo that. It's a kind of regret that feels human, where I'm like, ooh, I'm not proud of that decision I just made, and I feel bad about it, but it's true to the character I'm playing as. So in this episode, there's the sequence where you're doing the press conference with Harvey Dent, right? And they ask, how do you justify having a mobster like Falcone show up at the party? And sort of not thinking about it, because Telltale, they do it that time crunch thing where you have to choose quickly, you can't think about it too long. And maybe that's part of what it is too, because Bioware doesn't do that. You can take as long as you want. So you're kind of under pressure. So under pressure, I just chose the option to say, well, he was Harvey's guest. And Harvey kind of snaps at me like, what? Why would you say that in front of all these people? And the second after I did it, I was like, oh, that was kind of a faux pas. I should not have said that.
That's exactly what I did too.
Yeah, right. And so, but the thing is, unlike maybe in another game where I might think I'm gonna go back and redo that because I'm not happy with how that turned out. That becomes a crucial moment of character development for me, because now I'm like, okay, now I see part of Bruce Wayne's character comes through in that moment. There's vulnerability in that moment. He's like this, like, and that's sort of where the difference came in for me with this Bruce Wayne versus other incarnations of Bruce Wayne. But at least the way I'm playing him now is there's a certain sort of awkwardness to him, where in most things he's very, very suave. He's like, millionaire, philanthropist. He's like this kind of playboy who sleeps with a lot of women and has all this money and power, whatever. And that's whatever. I mean, that's Bruce Wayne. But this Bruce Wayne, the way I'm playing him, he has a sort of, like I said, a vulnerability and an awkwardness. Little things like where I was having a conversation with Vicky Vale, and she asked me a question or said something to me, and I wasn't really sure how to respond, or I wasn't really happy with any of the respond options, so I just chose silence. So I just kind of sat there and didn't really answer her question. And again, it's like this weird, vulnerable moment of awkwardness is created. And those to me became the defining moments of his characterization in this game. And that's something I love about Telltale, is that it creates these little moments that may not play out like you want, but really make you think about the character and yourself and the choices that you're making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I honestly, when I told Harvey, oh, that was his guess, I was like, I didn't feel bad about it, just because I don't know, it's weird. I did want to put I guess there was a part of me that did want to put the blame on him, because
right.
knowing my familiarity with Harvey Dent just from the comics and all the other stuff, is that he is a bit of he makes
Two-Face?
dumb decisions. He makes really dumb decisions, especially
Sure.
when dealing with Falcone, dealing with like other gangsters, where he's willing to compromise what he's preaching if it means getting him an extra vote, which is very in keeping with his character. So I didn't feel too bad about calling him out on his shit. But another thing I found interesting about this episode, and I know it sounds kind of hypocritical for me to go like, oh, the stupid geek culture and stuff like that, but I get a kick out of seeing, just as a fan, I get a kick out of seeing what they're going to have be different from other Batman incarnations in this series. And I think two things really struck out to me. One's kind of superficial, and the other one is like kind of a big deal. The superficial one is just seeing a different origin story for the Penguin, who's like, when I heard Oz, I was like, what? I was like, that Oz?
Who that is? Oh, I knew that name sounded familiar.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if he's actually going to be the Penguin by the end, or if he's just going to remain Oz or become a different villain altogether. I'm wondering even if that puts some doubt in my mind, if we're even going to have, I hope they don't, but if we're going to have Harvey turn into Two-Face yet again. I'm hoping that's not where it leads to, because it would be much more interesting if they do something else, but that's kind of what I'm expecting them to do, but I hope they prove me wrong. The other thing I found really interesting is that the implication that Bruce's parents were tied to the mob, or did have dealings with Falcone, even though they, in the past, have always been, like, the way they talk about them in the game, like, oh, they're so clean, they would never have any dealings with mobsters or anything like that. But in the game, it's like, well, yeah, I kind of did,
Right.
behind closed doors. So I'm interested to see where that's going to go in future episodes. But it wasn't like it wasn't like a shocking reveal. It wasn't like a oh my god. It was more just like, oh, that's an interesting change from this property that I'm familiar with. I want to see how they take advantage of that. And I hope it isn't brushed aside just in the opening scene where they go, oh, that was just a false photo or something like that. I hope they really get into it and really like see if we can dig up some dirt on Bruce's parents. That would be interesting for him to try to not weasel, but try to explain his way out of that, especially when the media comes crashing down upon him.
And that's sort of what's interesting to me. I think that something interesting there is that your decisions are coming in with some knowledge of the material and character, so you have a certain sort of maybe like a guardedness in the way you would deal with like Falcone or Harvey Dent. But for me, like I don't know, like I'm not familiar with this material. I know Harvey is just from movies. I don't know who Falcone is. So like the way I interacted with them wasn't really based in that at all. So like at the beginning, when Falcone comes in, I shake his hand and agree to meet with him because the only knowledge I have of him are people telling me that he's this bad guy. But in my head, it's like, well, I haven't seen him do anything bad. I don't know anything about him. I'll give him a chance until he gives me a reason not to trust him. So, and obviously that doesn't necessarily go the best for me because he does turn out to be kind of a giant shitbag. But hey, I mean that's part of that's part of my my experience with the property at this point. I mean that's part of like I said, all that stuff becomes part of the characterization and part of the narrative, and it never makes me feel like other games might, where I'm like I'm not happy with how that turned out. It's like I'm not happy with how that turned out, but it's in a good way.
Mm-hmm. How well do you remember Batman Begins?
I have not seen it since theaters, so I remember things about it.
Do you remember Tom Wilkinson's character?
No.
Oh, let's see. That's Falcone. That's where I'm getting I know exactly who Falcone is. I just think of Tom Wilkinson being a dick in Batman Begins.
Mm-hmm.
But do you want to move on? Do you want to talk about more choices, or do you want to move on to the gameplay stuff outside of the choices?
Well, yeah, we can cover a few. So, what were the big ones in this one? It was who you're giving the evidence to, how you handle Falcone. Those are really the only like big crucial choice moments, right? I mean, there are other little things, but
I was a bit disappointed with the big choices this time around.
They're a little too binary.
They are big choices, I guess, in the overall. I mean, of course, we don't know how the rest of the series is going to go. I guess they could be considered big choices in the long run, but for me, in that moment, I just felt like, well, I know the obvious answer from my perspective as someone who is familiar with this material. I'm like, I know the answer. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give the evidence to Gordon, and I'll arrest Falcone.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
But in other games, I think like The Walking Dead, or oh god, what's another good one? Like Wolf Among Us, where they have you choose like, are you going to arrest either the Woodsman or Tweedledee? And then like
much more
the big
ambiguous.
One, because you're like, ooh, who? I mean, looking back now, I'm like, I know exactly who to pick. I'm definitely going for Tweedledee, but in that moment,
I
was
don't remember.
Like,
so.
Oh, see, I'm like, okay, I don't know who to choose this time around. And even in The Walking Dead, even going back and playing it, I'm like, okay, who do I choose? Do I choose I forget their name specifically. The choice between saving one person or the other at the end of the first episode of The Walking Dead. But we'll get to that in another episode. But going back to Batman, the choices just felt like they just were really stale compared to what I've seen from Batman so far. I mean, not Telltale so far.
Well, we're forgetting, I mean, the most important choice in the game, which is what color do you want your Batman material to be?
That was hard. That was a hard-ass decision. I was like,
What'd you go with?
I just went with blue in the end because I'm like, what would look the best with because I actually have two save profiles. I did I did like a classic Batman, I did a rogue Batman. And just for the sake of consistency, I'll talk about the the safe Batman on the show. But I went with blue, and then with Rogue, I was like red. So I might do a purple and yellow playthrough one of these days, just once the whole series is done.
I almost did red, but I went purple in the end.
Purple looks nice. I liked that option. I liked cool shit like that because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't even matter in the end, but it's cool. It brings a more personal touch to the story because it's like, I mean, imagine like if going into the say like the Wolf Among Us, like, oh, you have 5 hats you could choose for Bigby to wear, or five ties for him to wear.
It is amazing how much a little pointless customization can go in making you feel like invested in that character.
Yeah, I mean, it's I compare that to something like a lot of these very linear narrative driven games. Not like I guess Firewatch would be a good example. Something like Firewatch where they take a lot of inspiration from Telltale. It's actually the studio that made it is from the guys that directed the very first Walking Dead season. And then they left Telltale and went on to form their own studio, and then they released Firewatch. Oh. So a lot of Firewatch's gameplay is very reminiscent of Telltale, but you're allowed to create your own origin story in like a silent text-based prologue, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting how more invested in your character, and I think that's what's missing from a lot of these I guess interactive dramas. I guess I don't really like the term walking simulator. I find it kind of condescending, but I guess interactive drama is what I'll say. But I mean, the big difference between something like Firewatch, which I don't think Firewatch is a good game. I think Firewatch has a lot of problems, but with that personal investment, it does do things differently in a direction that I do really, really like and appreciate compared to something like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which is a better game, but, and I put game in quotation marks, but you're just this floating head that talks, you're a floating camera that interacts with beams of light, and that's pretty much all you're doing. And like the music and the visuals do a damn good job of trying to sell you on what's going on. I mean, it's a fascinating, I won't get too much into Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, but it's a story about, just hearing the plot, where it's about ordinary people dealing with the apocalypse and you seeing how it happened and how they reacted to it. To me, that's a fascinating idea, but something like where you're just a camera, it kind of loses that personal investment because you're watching a story that you want to be playing rather than just a glorified cameraman going around. Right. But something like Telltale, which doesn't often do the whole, like the small color-based choice stuff, but where they extensively go in for it in most situations. I think sometimes, like you said, they do hold back because there has to be a second season, or they don't want to make it so dark that it's like off-putting, like something like Minecraft. But I love that idea of like, which Clementine do I want to be? Which Bigby do I want to be? Which Reese or Fiona do I want to be?
And it's not necessarily just customization either. I think that also speaks to why I've had a hard time getting into RPGs where either the character doesn't talk or you don't really see them. Like Fallout 3 I couldn't get into, the first Dragon Age I couldn't get into, Knights of the Old Republic I couldn't get into, because there's something distancing and dehumanizing about not having that voice or visual. And I understand the mentality behind it, where they want it to be this faceless thing that you can sort of imagine yourself onto. You can imagine your own voice into, and you can breathe that into the character. But I think that's ultimately misguided because it winds up feeling, it doesn't feel human after a while. Like when you're just a floating camera, it doesn't really feel like you're a human being in that environment. It becomes it pushes me away after a while. Whereas when I have a fully realized talking character that I can see in like Mass Effect or The Walking Dead, whatever it is, I can relate to that character on a human level, and resultantly I can put myself into their shoes much more. I can empathize with them much more, and I can make it feel like I'm in that role much more than I can. I think that's something that's just true of storytelling in general. I mean, that's why we make art with characters in it, because people can relate to it. I mean, that's you need that human element to bring the audience in, and I think it's misguided to try to make a game where you where you don't have that level of relation. If we're talking about a game that's based in drama and choice and morality, I think you need to have it there. It's a little different. I mean, if it's like Call of Duty and you're shooting things, it's not necessarily the same thing. But I mean, yeah, if you're making a game where you really have to be involved in the narrative and the characters and what's happening, I think you need that level of relation.
I agree with you for the most part. I can't get into a lot of stuff where you're the silent protagonist. I think like one of the and this is a big disagreement of ours. I think Skyrim is probably one of the very few that has a silent protagonist. Like you are completely just nothing. You're a blank slate, and yet the world around you is so beautiful and interesting that I'm just like, I don't care. I want to just dive in and explore, and I love it.
Yeah, see, I think every Bethesda game I've tried is unplayable to me. I think they are probably the single worst game developer out there. I cannot get into anything they release. I think I think the gameplay is just flat out broken and not enjoyable, and it's just like, yeah, I cannot get into their rating or their graphics or fucking anything they do. I just hate all of it.
Oh no! In a world where like people like Techland exist,
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, those are the guys that did Dying Light and all those fucking Dead Island games.
Oh shit! Yeah, those games are really bad.
That studio, like I'm sure there's some nice people working for the studio. I'm not saying you're an asshole, but I'm just saying the games that they've made, and they've made 3 of my most hated games ever, like Call of Juarez, The Cartel, which I find nauseating, Dying Light, which I thought was god-awful, and Dead Island, which was probably the most boring game I'd ever played until Dying Light came out.
I didn't get far into either of those games. I think they're about equal with Skyrim and the Fallout games.
Whoa! Oh my goodness, no.
I made it about as far. I made it farther into Fallout 3, but only because it was at the time it came out, and I didn't know any better.
Yeah, Dying Light, I like forced myself through that. I was like, no, this game is not going. Yep.
Oh
all
my
12
god.
Hours, all 12 hours.
Why?
Yeah. 12 hours I will never get, because that's exactly what Shane said, and Shane's a friend of mine. But he was like, why the hell are you still playing this thing? And I just said, because I am not going to let this beat me. I am going to play through the whole thing.
But you did let it beat you by sticking with it.
See, I'm gonna beat it to the credits, and I'm going to give it the fucking D it deserves. This is a fucking piece of shit.
This is my part of my problem with like video games and TV shows, where it's like a movie. If a movie is bad, like a movie is done in 2 hours, hour and a half, whatever, and it's gone. It's like, well, that's
in the case of like Bellatar. It's like 7 hours.
Yeah, sure. But in that case, I might not make it all the way through if it's a movie that's that long. Not that I'm talking about Bellatar necessarily, but with a TV show, I mean, when people tell me things like, oh, if I stick with it for a while, it gets really good in like season 4. I'm like, season 4, motherfucker, like, you want me to sit through 3 seasons of not that good first? Like, no, that I don't have the time for that shit, man. Like, I can't wait around for 3, like, that is a long time to invest in something if it's not hooking me. You know what I mean? Like, same TV show or a video game too. Like 12 hours is a long time to invest in something that's not good.
Yeah, that was a rough 12 hours. The shitty part of it I was like, okay, it's probably going to end right here. It's going to be a dumb boss fight, whatever. And then it kept going, and I was like, okay, maybe this is the climax. No, and then it just kept going, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, God, well, I'm this far. I might as well go through the whole thing. And it's not like Call of Juarez, The Cartel, which was just nauseating.
I didn't make it far into that one either.
I felt like they slapped Vaseline all over the camera. I hated it. I hated the way it looked. I guess like Watch Dogs 2, which I'm not a fan of Ubisoft all that much either, but I don't know. That's like would I rather play through Dying Light again, or would I rather play through Watch Dogs again? I think I'd rather play through... Honestly, as much as I hate Watch Dogs, as much as I give shit, rightfully so, giving the shit to Watch Dogs, I might rather sit through Watch Dogs again? Maybe? Because it's not first person. I guess that's the only thing I can say to it. It doesn't nauseate me from a camera point of view, so...
Sure.
As like misogynistic and fucking horrible as it is, it's, you know, it's not like shaky cam misogynist like Dying Light.
Yeah.
God, imagine that would be a genre. Shaky cam misogyny. I'm gonna coin that. That's a good term.
I'm sure something out there fits that label.
VHS. I'd say VHS.
Ooh, yeah.
Fits that label. The first one.
Yeah.
I've never seen the second one, but the first one I fucking hated.
Yeah, it's not good.
No. But I guess going into outside of the choices,
Yeah.
the fucking sound glitches. Jesus Christ.
Oof. Yeah, you know, I love Telltale, but they get a lot of shit for glitches, and I mean, it's pretty deserved. Yeah, the sound glitch. I only had one major sound glitch in my playthrough of this episode, which was when at the beginning in the prologue where Batman shoots up the elevator shaft.
That's the exact one that I got.
Yeah, there's just all of the back, like the sound effects went out. It was just nothing.
Yeah.
It was silent.
I was like, oh no, please don't do this. No.
Now, it's much less egregious than, for me, by the glitchiest Telltale experience I had was the first season of Game of Thrones on PS3, which, I mean, they were towards the end of that season. I mean, I really like that game. I think it's probably one of their better seasons. But, oh man, some of it was almost to the point of being broken. Like, there are parts where I was like, I had to like reboot. It would barely move. It would just freeze. All the sound would go like in every scene. It's very frustrating. So when I replay it for this podcast, I will absolutely be doing it on the PS4 version.
Yeah, I think that's one of their problems. I mean, outside of like gameplay limitations, I think they do a disservice to themselves by continuing to release these games on so many different platforms. I'd rather they just stick to just the basic three. Just do PC, PS4, Xbox One. Don't do the fucking Vita or PS3 or any of that other shit. Anything that requires multiple different coding or anything like that. Just keep it streamlined, keep it simple.
Sure. I mean,
and I think that shows in a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, I mean, in their defense, I get that they're sort of like an indie developer, and I'm sure they make a lot of money on the mobile platforms and stuff, but yeah, you can tell it does compromise their stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's helping like keep them afloat so they can keep doing this, more power to them, but yeah, you're right. I mean, the glitches are are frustrating.
Have you ever seen the glitch where Big B Wolf turns into the stripper from Wolf Among Us?
No, I have not.
Because it's the scene after he gets shot up by the Tweedledees, and he's got the shotgun shells in him, and the doctor's pulling and he's shirtless. He's pulling the shells out of him. For whatever reason, he just starts doing the animation for the Little Mermaid. I forget her name, but the stripper from one of the previous episodes. So he's just sitting there. Just randomly, it glitches in and out of him sitting there, and then he'll just start grinding and humping the air for no reason, and then it will just go back to him sitting. Oh man, it's so.
That's great.
It makes them look bad, but it's fucking hilarious.
Oh, that's great.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I think the other like really funny glitch I've ever had was I think it was Game of Thrones. I think it was like that part in the beginning where you go to the pig farm and your family's dead, and the sound of the swords left, so all you would hear would just like you'd hear and all just grunting, and it would just nothing. Yeah. And I just was like, I don't want to restart this because this is just
on PS3. That's like every scene in Game of Thrones is like that. All the sound effects are just gone like constantly. I think it's just that. And I think that game is just by the nature of the material is very heavy on sound effects, like horses and armor and swords and dirt and crowds, and there's a lot of sound going on in that game. I think probably more so than any of their other games. So it may just be that, I mean, just that the programming, at least on the PS3 version, can just barely handle powering all of that. Um,
Yeah.
it was rough. I really love that season, but it is rough.
I know they keep saying that, we've upgraded our engine for this game. We've upgraded. They said like upgraded our engine for Batman. We've upgraded our engine for Walking Dead Season 3. And it shows in the trailers, like when you
Yeah.
see it just from a visual standpoint, you're like, yeah, this does look better than Wolf Among Us or particularly the first Walking Dead. But when you actually see it in person, like playing it, it's like, ooh, there's still that stuttering, there's still the
Yeah.
glitches, and it's like,
I will
oh.
say, from what I remember, Tales from the Borderlands played pretty smoothly for me. I think that was their easiest.
Yeah, I was shocked by how smooth that was. I mean, in some places it stuttered, particularly like the big choice stuff where
Mm-hmm.
a lot of your past stuff would count, but it ran really well, shockingly, particularly after Walking Dead Season 2 kind of was just
Mm-hmm.
for me from a frame rate perspective. It just was like, yeah, it's okay, but it's pretty inconsistent in some areas.
So besides the glitches, so the gameplay, okay, so like these games have I think Telltale Games have sort of two areas when you're playing them. There's the one area, which is when you're having conversations and making choices, which is why I play them. And then you have the other area where you're walking around, maybe looking for something, maybe interacting
Puzzle.
with little pieces of the environment. Yeah, God forbid puzzles. Um, that stuff, I don't think for the most part, I don't know if they've made that work for me yet. I think a lot of it feels very sort of perfunctory because being that these games are based in a certain kind of narrative gameplay, I mean, you can't really have a scene like that fail. Like you can't really like in Batman, there's really just one big scene, which is the when you're like investigating the crime scene. But I mean, there can really only be one result of that scene. They can't really let you
Yeah.
not solve that crime. So at the end of the day, I'm sort of like, this ultimately feels pretty hollow. Like it just feels like a lip service. Like, why am I even bothering to play through this? You know what I'm saying?
See,
Like I know,
I liked that a lot, only because with my like I've played like some of the more recent Arkham games focus more on crime solving and stuff like that, and they are just fucking tedious. Like they make you rewind and reattach certain items and stuff like that, and they can get pretty lengthy. But it slows the game so down, particularly in a game that's all about quick combat, quick reflexes, and then you have these long puzzle sections that just make you rewind video footage. But in this, I was like, okay, it's not complex, and it's not
yeah,
laborious either, which I like. I like that it's just a simple, like more like logic-based stuff where you're like, oh, you see someone has human flesh embedded in their fingernails. You see a person next to them that has their throat clawed out. That seems like a pretty obvious connection there. So you do
right,
that, or like, oh, there's a bullet trajectory here. This is where the gun was. This is where the
sure,
explosion happened. You can link those. And it's like, that it may not be it may seem rather, just
shallow,
shallow or just
pointless.
superficial or something like that. But
Yes.
it works only because it doesn't waste your time, and it makes you
Yeah.
feel like Batman without putting in the legwork, and I
I'll
like that a lot.
yeah, I will say I appreciate the brevity of it. Like it's not they don't really like make you sit in it, and it doesn't take forever. It doesn't slow down the
Yeah,
gameplay too much. It's a
they do it
fairly
once.
quick moving scene. So for me it was a little just like, okay, like let's get through this, but it wasn't to the point where I was like, "Oh my God, can this end?" You know what I mean? It's not
That shit was
overly intrusive.
horrifying too.
Oh
Looking
yeah,
at
it was
that,
fucking
particularly
brutal.
for like Batman, I was like, that's actual gore. That's like an organ. That's like organs and
Well, I
people
mean,
with their throats gouged open and shit. I was like, holy shit. And
it's
I know
pretty
Batman
bold.
can get violent in some situations, but this is the one that I'm like, okay, this I can see the M rating. I couldn't see it with Arkham Knight. Only like very few sections that's like a very light M rating.
I will
And it's
say
more of a
they
marketing stunt than actual like hard and edgy. But this was like, this deserves to be M. There's some fucked up shit in this.
The opening moment of the game is someone getting shot in the head and blood coming out. I mean, so they announced right off the bat what we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with showing gore in a Batman game. We don't get it. I think more like we're going to get it more now. Like actually labeling it as like, rated R or M rating, where like some of the past Batman movies have been fucking violent and bloody, and they still have PG-13s attached to them. Like the Dark Knight Returns movie has like the Joker killing like mass amount of people. Like you see blood spill out, you see a guy like have his hand like pretty much nod to the point of like blood on a door, and it's fucking disturbing. But it's like, oh no, it's still PG-13. But here it's like, thank you. Yes, the M. This actually, you can take it to that degree, and it won't feel like, oh, wow, that's just fucked up. But it's fucked up, but it's not off-putting. It's not like I hate to keep bringing up Batman Returns, but it's not fucked up, but it's like off-putting like Batman Returns is.
So there's that level, and like I said, there's really only that scene in this episode. There are like smaller things where you're like analyzing the data at the computer and everything, but it's not a big deal, not really that notable. The other thing with the Telltale games is QuickTime events, which is hugely like crucial to their gameplay, which I can have mixed feelings about. I'm not always crazy about QuickTime events in games. I do think the speed at which things are going on in this episode, especially with like the Catwoman fight, is it does create. It's sort of like how I feel about the what I was saying about like when you make mistakes in your choices, where I don't regret it as much as I'm just sort of like it makes me invested. It makes me want to succeed, and if I fail, it's like shit. You know what I mean? So like the Catwoman fight, I was like really engaged and like, no, I do not want to lose this fight. I do not want this person to get away. I am going to hit every cue perfectly. And that scene I did just because I was invested. And in that sense, the QuickTime events did become engaging and they became like this sort of experiential enhancement, which sometimes they don't always feel like. I think that's their goal typically. Some games don't always do it so well, and it just sort of becomes to feel like kind of the crime scene in this felt to me, where it's just sort of hollow interaction, where this is going to turn out how it's going to turn out, and they want you to feel like you're engaging with it, but it's not really that big of a deal. But with this, I mean, not it's I don't know how much you could fail. I don't know if that really matters that much, but it made me invested in the moment, and I felt like I was in that fight trying to hold my own.
Yeah. I'm very mixed when it comes to QT, especially recently. I'm more mixed on QTEs. I think Telltale is one of the very few that do it well. I don't think you could ever perfect QuickTime events to where I would be like, I look forward to every QuickTime event, but it would they come close. They're one of the people that come the closest to me being, okay, I am not annoyed by these QuickTime events. I somewhat like them in most situations. They're not insta-fail, which I hate. I hate those in any game where you have to press every single button in order to survive. I mean, even then, there are some exceptions that, like God of War, that do focus a lot on, like, you have to push every button or you're screwed. But, like, that's one of those ones that's, like, you are so in the sweat of combat that you're like, yes, I want to murder everybody. I will get every fucking button prompt you have. I don't care. I want to kill everybody. But something like The Order, where it's like insta-stealth, and then you have to do insta-QTEs, and it's just awful. Because, one, The Order sucks. I'm sorry. I love PlayStation, but The Order fucking sucks.
That game is awful.
Two, that's another one that I was like, well, I'll have to get through this in order to get my full opinion on it. It's so short, and yet it felt way longer than it actually was.
I played for like an hour, and that felt long.
I love the ending. Actually, I stared at the screen in disbelief. Like, the ending is just two QTE button presses. Like you load a gun and then you shoot, and you don't do them you just do them by pressing like X and circle or something like that.
That game
is
barely a game.
Yeah.
The level of interactivity in that game is so perfunctory and so shallow and ridiculous. I was like, this is insane. Just make a movie, because you clearly want to make a movie. This is not meant to be played.
It has its head up its ass so much with what it wants to be. It has that god awful widescreen effect, which I hate in almost everything. I hate when games do that. One, because you're not a movie, you're a game, and I actually want to see the full scope of where I'm shooting. And two, it's just distracting.
I'm not like completely like against it. I respected it as like an artistic choice if it has a purpose.
But it limits the gameplay, that's where I draw the line.
Well, the moment for me in the order where I instantly knew this game was not going to work was at the very beginning when you're breaking out of prison, and I don't forget what it is. All you're armed with is like a plank or something. I don't remember what it was. But
I think it was a knife.
Something like that. Something really basic like that that doesn't do much. But you are in a room where, as decoration on the table, there is a revolver and bullets lying on the table. And it is not something you can pick up. It is just decoration. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Who thought of this? Why would you put something in the game where clearly any person like thinking logically is like, I need to pick that up because that is a better weapon than this wooden plank I'm holding. But no, they force you to stick with the plank and you can't take the gun. I was like, okay, so this is clearly not intuitive. They're not thinking about how a human being is going to react to seeing things in an environment. They're so focused on their pathetically linear, like barely interactive gameplay and what they want to tell as a basically a movie that they just they are just fundamentally illogical and completely removed me from the experience.
Even as a movie, it would have been awful. It's so predictable. It's like. And they don't take advantage of. I mean, we're going off on a tangent about the order, but fuck it, I'll go for it. It is like they hyped it up initially, and I was excited because it was one of the games that they announced when the PS4 was just getting announced, and they had that whole thing where they were like, "Fuck you, Microsoft, we're gonna have our shit, and it's gonna be much better." But that was one of the ones that they debuted, and I was like, "Holy shit, this actually looks really cool." And seeing the trailer, I was like, "Is this gonna be like a 4-player co-op thing where you get to kill werewolves and monsters and stuff?" That's with like steampunk Victorian era weaponry. It looks really cool. And then they go, no, it's just you're single person, very limited, and it's all based on the guidance of the game developers. And that's like, okay, well, that could work. I mean, God of War 2 in extent is something like that, but God of War is, I mean, this totally is subjective, but God of War is exciting. God of War has a purity to it. It knows exactly what it is, and it just goes for it. And it's interesting. It has a lot of dark comedy to it. It's very brutal, but not in a like a kind of way. More like a I want to play more kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But particularly the new one. The new one looks fucking great. I can't wait for that. But the order, it's like it goes from room to room to room, and it's just the same thing, and you walk so slow, and then the game will give you weapons that's like, here's this lightning gun from the trailer that we showed you a long time ago. Use it for 1 second. Oh, you're done. Here, I'm taking it back now. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, don't even give me the toy if you're going to take it out of my hands in the very next scene.
Yeah.
Just don't do that. Just make a movie. Make a CGI movie.
Yeah, and I'll say something right now that, again, is an opinion that is not going to endear a lot of listeners, but I love the Call of Duty franchise. I think those games are first-person shooters perfected. I think some of those games have some of the best campaigns I've ever played. Not all of them, but most of them, particularly like the Infinity Ward ones.
Yes,
but
great.
Yeah. But yeah, I will say this much. I actually loved Advanced Warfare. I think that is one of my favorite Call of Duty campaigns to date. But something that is a little frustrating about that is what you were just saying, is they do these things where they give you these exosuits with all these super cool abilities where you can jump really high and run really fast or whatever the hell it is. You have basically have like jetpack abilities, but they are inconsistent about what type of exo suits you get to wear in each level, and they determine it based on each level. So there you'll get one where you get an exosuit and you can like basically jetpack over stuff, and then it's like, oh, this is so much fun. I love this. I'm just like the freedom of the gameplay. I can get all like vertical for the first time in Call of Duty. It's great. And then the next mission, you're not in that exosuit anymore. So there are all these moments where you're like, well, I'm going to jump over this, but you're like, oh, I can't anymore. And that's frustrating because it's like what you said, they give you a taste of that freedom and then they take it away based on like how they want the gameplay to work. And it's like, don't do that. You should be, why don't you let me choose which type of exosuit I want to use in each level? Like if I want to do that, I should be able to. It's frustrating when you take that away.
Yeah. I mean, something simple like that, I can apply to Telltale as well, with like Minecraft. Or Minecraft, like the finale of the Witherstorm thing, lets you make your own weapon, lets you choose your own suit of armor, and it doesn't matter really what you choose. You're gonna win in the end anyway. But it's that like it's giving you that choice of like a bunch of like cool little toys and like how you want to look. And it gives you that option, and it doesn't take it away from you. You keep using the same armor for the rest of the series and the adventure stuff, but it's like, here you go. This is yours to keep. We're not going to revert you back to your old shit in the next episode. And I like that. I appreciate that from somebody who likes to look cool while I'm killing stuff in games. So,
yeah.
But, yeah. I will say Call of Duty. I think Call of Duty, I don't dislike it to the degree that a lot of people, like when the Battlefield 1 trailer came out and everyone was like, fuck Advanced, oh no, what the hell's the new one? Infinite Warfare? Is that the new one?
Yes.
Where it's like, where they're like, fuck Infinite Warfare, and this looks like shit, and I'm just like, it doesn't look like shit, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't strike me as particularly fun, at least from that trailer, which I didn't like the trailer. I like the gameplay that they've shown. That looked like fun. Like the space combat stuff. It's funny that a Call of Duty game has space combat before Star Wars does.
I'm into it. I think Infinite Warfare is going to be awesome.
I'm still a little more excited for, well, not a little. I'm still more interested in Battlefield 1 just because it's World War One, and I get to be my Middle Eastern people riding against tanks with a sword. You know, that in a war game. I don't care about guns. I want a sword.
Yeah.
A sword and a horse. I will go to town with it.
You know what? I've never played sword gameplay that's enjoyable. And I also hate all the Battlefield games I've played so far. So, nah, I'm good.
I'm more of like a casual admirer of the Battlefield series, but I even like because I kind of got burned out like a lot of people on the more modern military shooting stuff. Even the new Medal of Honor, which was a series I used to love back in the day, I thought was garbage from the recent 2 entries.
Yeah.
But going back to World War One, I think that can be interesting, but I hope they don't. I hope they change the gameplay enough, because after Battlefield 4, which I was like, this is starting to get a little like stale for me, particularly after 3, which 3 I don't mind. 3 I kind of like, but yeah, but Call of Duty, I have a mixed history with it. I like the Modern Warfare trilogy a lot. I like the first Black Ops a lot, and I even like Ghosts to a certain extent. I know Ghosts is the one that everyone is like, oh, that game is awful.
No. Ghosts is one of the absolute best Call of Duty games. That game is great. That campaign is stellar. The writing is great. They got Stephen Gaghan to do it. That game is fucking great. I do not understand what people don't like about that game. And I will say, though, I really do not like the first Black Ops or the second Black Ops.
It's been so long since I played them, but I remember really liking them. It was the third one that I finally just lost patience. I was like, nope, I'm done. Like,
that's funny because the third one was the only Black Ops game I like.
See, to me, it was, they took elements from all these different games, but it was to cover this formula that I had gotten tired of after Ghost. Like Ghost, I was like, okay, this was all right. This is,
I
I
don't
kind of want to
see.
see more of this. And then they just repeated that with Advanced. And I've never
No.
played Advanced Warfare, and they kind of were like, oh, here we go, it's Advanced Warfare.
I don't understand that. I do not see how Black Ops 3 is similar to Ghosts at all. I think the gameplay is totally different. I think the themes and narrative are totally different. I think they feel very, very different. I mean, Black Ops 3 is I appreciate that they're people have this attitude about Call of Duty where they're like, it's just a formula. Every game is the same thing over and over. But I give them a lot of credit. For me, when I play those games, I see a lot of gameplay innovations every time out. I never feel like they're just regurgitating the same thing over and over. The gameplay in Black Ops 3 really felt different than Call of Duty because they made it much more like an arena. Like all the levels. Call of Duty is typically fairly linear with the way the levels work. You're basically running through like an obstacle course shooting people and like having various set pieces occur as you're doing that. But with Black Ops 3, they really made it like, here's a big sort of square battlefield that's very large, and you can kind of work your way through it however you want, which it really is not similar to other Call of Duties. None of the other ones really play that way.
From what I remember going like, yeah, this feels a lot like every other Call of Duty I've ever played, and I'm kind of tired of it at this point, sort of. But
well, I think the mechanics do, but only because like I said, I think they've perfected their mechanics, and I don't think they should mess with them because they play incredibly smoothly and intuitively and well, sort of like Grand Theft Auto. Like, you don't mess with that control scheme because it just fucking works. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I mean, you talk about Call of Duty going through not significant, but like changes throughout the whole series. I think Grand Theft Auto is a much better example of that, where like when I can't even go back to 4 anymore because of how much better the shooting and the navigation is in 5.
Sure. I mean, they definitely.
Like 4, I was like, this. I mean, it's not garbage, but it's. I'd rather just be playing 5 right now. As much as I used to love 4, I was like, I want 5 instead.
They certainly tweak and upgrade and improve and make things better, but I'm talking like the basic control scheme and mechanics tend to run similar. Like you could, if you know the control scheme and everything of Grand Theft Auto 5, you can go to 4 and you'll be able to play that too without like a tutorial because they use the same basic control scheme and everything, and they should, because their control scheme is intuitive and it makes sense and it works. And that's how I feel about Call of Duty. It's just like a perfected control scheme, and they don't really bother to mess with that part of it because they shouldn't, because it works beautifully, and they innovate within the rest of the game, which I appreciate about them. I think that's a smart way of approaching it.
I'm still like,
yeah.
I just don't see it. Like
everyone else, I know.
I can. You know, what you're saying is interesting, and it makes me do want to go back and try, maybe not Black Ops 3 because I hated the story for that, but maybe go back and try Ghosts or...
You should try Advanced Warfare. Advanced Warfare is a really solid campaign. I mean, fucking Kevin Spacey is the villain, and Advanced Warfare has the best graphics of any game I've ever played. It's so polished and smooth, and the narrative is engaging, and the gameplay is fun, and it adds like I said, like little tweaks, like the jetpacks. There's a moment in Advanced Warfare when I realized I could do something that is... I love these moments in games where like they don't advertise it. They don't like funnel you into thinking, hey, you could do this if you wanted to. They just sort of leave it open for you to find. And again, that's not something a lot of people would look at Call of Duty for doing. But there's a moment in Advanced Warfare where you're fighting like a helicopter, right? And the game sort of funnels you into saying, here, there's like a mounted gun. You can get on this gun and shoot down the helicopter. And that's what I did like the first time, or the first 1 or 2 times I played it. And then I don't remember even how I discovered it, but I found it by accident one time I was playing it. And somehow I wound up inside of the helicopter, which it is never like, you're never pushed into thinking is a possibility. But I managed to like jetpack into the helicopter, kill the people inside it from within the helicopter, and then like throw them out, and then like kill everyone so the helicopter crashes and I jump out of it before it crashes. That's not something it tried to set up that was a possibility. I just discovered it. And I was like, that is fucking awesome. That the world the world they made is that interactive, and that if you want to take down the helicopter that way, you can. You don't have to do it the way they tell you to. Like that's like a beautiful moment that is unique to video games, that really it creates like this memorable personal experience.
God, that makes me want to go back and play some of the older ones at least, because I don't. I'd have to find Advanced Warfare for cheap, because I don't know if I'm willing to. I don't know. I think it's still full price, which I think is ridiculous for especially like an almost 2-year-old game.
Yeah.
But I mean that makes me excited to go back and try out the Modern Warfare remaster once that's available separately.
Oh, I got that shit pre-ordered.
Oh, no. No, you're letting him know that it's okay.
It is okay. I can't fucking wait for those games.
Oh, God. Well, I think, like, I mean, we won't continue on too much to Call of Duty because it's still a Telltale podcast.
Yeah, I know. We're running real long.
I will say, I think a lot of why people hate Call of Duty, or at least in quotations, hate, is because it does feel like I think franchise fatigue at this point. It's a lot like Assassin's Creed, where like one comes out every single year, and I think even games that don't work in a series most of the time, like they have years between them, but that gives people time to, kind of relax after the last one. And because of how much DLC and how much extra money like the studios want from you, it just feels kind of like, what's the point if I'm just going to put down all this money for the new one, and then by the end of next year, it will just be irrelevant, and it will be like... But
well, part of it is...
A lot of that adds is the multiplayer. That's the other thing.
Yeah, which I don't really mess with, so...
Yeah.
It's really the thing for me. But, I mean, hey, if they could release 3 Call of Duties a year, and I'd be fucking happy. I am down for that shit.
I'd be okay with it if they broke off the campaign and sold it as like $30. Then I'd be like, okay, I would be more interested in that, as opposed to like, here's the full $60 package with maybe the campaign that you might like and some other multiplayer shit that, even the zombies, I'm just like, ugh. Like,
yeah, the zombie stuff I don't like. But you know what? I really got to give them credit for this. They make the multiplayer, like you can play that multiplayer locally with bots that are like really, really well designed bots that feel pretty convincing. And they do that still. They don't have to do that. I mean, there are a lot of games that now like really try to force you into paying more for that multiplayer and online, but they do not need to keep including that. I can't imagine a lot of people use that. I use it. It's fun. I like it. I don't have to pay more for it. Like I respect a lot of things that they do with those games.
Yeah, I could go on a whole nother podcast about bots and how awesome they are, but like I respect the hell out of any game that will include bots like right from the get-go. Like any game that's like, here, we have put extra time into
and work. But they put work into making those bots good.
Yeah, like making them feel maybe not totally realistic, but they give you a challenge, and I like that a lot. And I can greatly appreciate any game that does that. It's why I was a little disappointed with the multiplayer. Not like overall, but like the part that I was disappointed with like Doom is that they don't have bots, but the bots are coming later, and that's kind of a little bit forgivable for me, just because I find the multiplayer of Doom so much fun, just even without the bots, and I just love like tearing people in half with a monster or a chainsaw or whatever. It's just fun. But like Battlefront, I think just that got killed in the cradle because it forces you to go through like all of the multiplayer just with other people. And like even when they finally like begrudgingly added bots, it was only limited to 2 modes, and I was like, that's it? Like really? Oh, okay. Like the old Battlefronts did that. The old Battlefronts did that, and then it was like, well, not anymore.
Right. Well, I guess we should probably dig ourselves off tangents and end this up here, because man, we are really long.
Oh yeah. Do you want to end this with the Batman versus Superman, the Nolan, the triple thing? I mean, that might...
I think we could probably get into that as the series progresses. I'm sure they'll explore it more than they have, so...
Sure.
Yeah. I will say that we are planning on doing at the end of every episode an updated top 5 list where we just only using the episodes we've covered so far. So we'll just rank them as we go, our favorites.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, with so far, my list begins and ends with the first episode of Batman.
It's tough to rank them.
It's tough. I know. It's hard to decide.
I mean, especially when we're going to get into like the other stuff. I mean, I thought about making a list, but then I was like, God, that's going to change like every time I go back to them and play through them again. Because I used to, like some of the old Minecraft episodes, I'm like, ooh, no, not anymore. Or like the very first Tales from the Borderlands episode, I really didn't like, but like the second time I played it, I was like, wow, this is really good.
I love the first episode of that.
I found it so boring the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll make more sense to do it to update it as we go and not to do it from the beginning.
No. Top 5 sound glitches.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that probably covers it. I mean, I think we more than covered it. We talked about way too much shit.
I think we might have talked more about Call of Duty than Batman.
Yeah. We should probably try to, in the future, maybe hone in our focus a little.
Oh, hell yeah. Might as well be a Call of Duty podcast.
Yeah. Well, anyway, though, I guess that's it, everyone.
Where can people find you, Jordan?
Oh, shit. Okay. So, my old movie discussion podcast, Fifth Opinion, it's on iTunes. It's on YouTube. It's out there. I sometimes appear on a Kanye West podcast called Watching the Throne, which is great. And I sometimes write for filmcolossus.com. I got some stuff going on there right now. And I am at @5th_opinion on Twitter.
And I am usually almost exclusively on Razorblade Mango YouTube. Just cover more game and movie stuff. Go on rants every so often. My Twitter, I'm too lazy to bring up my Twitter, but I'll link it in the description box below. I hope you bring Fifth Opinion back one of these days, like a comeback someday.
Hopefully, we'll see. I haven't found the motivation to do it yet, but who knows? That door has not completely closed.
Oh. I looked forward to those when those were coming out. I was like, oh, it's Saturday, and now it's or Monday. Fifth Opinion, woo!
Well, hey, that's great to hear, man. We did a lot of them. I mean, there are like 62 episodes of that. Yeah. There's a lot out there.
I still think the Black Hat one, or Black Hat or Gone Girl is the best one. If you listen to the Gone Girl one, go to that one. That will like make or break you regarding like whether you want to keep going with Fifth Opinion. If you're like me and went, oh, this is interesting, and like want to keep going, or you're just like, no, fuck this guy, he didn't like Gone Girl. No. The episode
that got so heated, I almost lost one of my best friends over it.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go. There's a hook for people.
That's a hell of a hook. That makes me want to go back and listen to it like right now.
Yeah. But we're all okay now.
But yeah. Thank you guys for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe. I'll try to get a Twitter set up within the next few days. If I remember, please remind me if I forget, because I do want to keep a separate Twitter for this. I'm not sure if I'll put this on iTunes yet. I got to look at the options, but for now it's just YouTube. But if we decide to do iTunes later on, of course I'll put the old episodes up there. So I think that about wraps it up for now. It's a great debut episode. Very enjoyable.
Very, very long debut episode, but yes.
But yeah. Nolan's great.
All right.
I love Nolan. Well,
oh shit.
Used to love him. Still like him, but his new movie looks good. He just did the
I did. We'll see.
But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and catch you next time on Point and Click.
Point and click. Yes.
Point and click. Not click and point.
Right. Not click and point.
Not click and point. Bye.
All right.
No one has ever managed to bring him down. I haven't tried yet.
Come on!
A fire is heading this way. He must show the world the true nature of a Wayne. Sometimes I think this whole city's a crime scene.
A revolution is knocking on Gotham's door. When this whole thing starts, make sure you're on the right side.
Well then, time to save the city.